Gretwicken, this is St Andrews Bay. How do you read me? Over. Gretwicken, this is St Andrews Bay. How do you read me? Over. Gretwicken, this is St Andrews Bay. How do you read me? Over.
On April the 3rd, 1982, Cindy Buxton's and Annie Price's radio link with the British Antarctic Survey Base at Gretwicken, South Georgia, was suddenly broken. The Argentines had invaded. Fortunately, they were well equipped to survive for quite a long while. In the event, they were stranded for just a month, but at the time, there was no way of knowing how long it would be. St Andrews Bay, where they'd landed 7 months earlier, in October 1981, is not the most hospitable of places at the best of times. They had come to St Andrews Bay to film the immense king penguin colony there, a difficult assignment at any time. The weather, even in the so-called summer months, from November to March, is seldom as kind as this. Luckily, they'd almost completed their film when the Argentines invaded. While they were waiting for rescue by the British task force, Cindy Buxton and Annie Price carried on filming, stranded on South Georgia. The Falklands lie 400 miles off the Argentine coast. South Georgia is a further 800 miles to the southeast of them. The island is about 120 miles long and consists largely of mountains, snowfields and glaciers. The only habitations are 2 scientific bases and 2 old whaling stations at Leith and Gretwicken. The John Biscoe, with Cindy and Annie aboard, made its first call at Gretwicken. From Gretwicken, the Biscoe carried Cindy and Annie on south to St Andrews Bay. St Andrews Bay is only about 10 miles from Gretwicken overland, but it's an extremely arduous journey across mountains and glaciers. By sea, it's about 2 hours steaming, provided some ship is able or prepared to make the journey. Bass was prepared to land the 2 girls and take them off 6 months later, but the latter part of the plan was forestalled by the Argentine attack. When moving in at St Andrews Bay, neighbours aren't a problem, but almost everything else is. The first task is to stow 6 months' stores and make them secure against gales that can blow up within minutes. Winds of 70 miles per hour are not exceptional. At the start of what ranks in these latitudes as summer, they often bring snow. When Cindy and Annie first arrived, there was no flowing water. It was all still snow or ice. Water for drinking and cooking had to be gathered in solid form. The hut itself was cosy enough, but hardly spacious. Whether they were writing up the day's filming or brewing the tea, it all had to be done in a total space of 8 feet by 12, the size of a very small sitting room. There were 2 bunks and a radio squashed into the cubicle. It took 2 hours just to melt down 5 gallons of drinking water, a necessary but immensely time-consuming chore. The solar panel makes use of the sun's energy for charging radio and camera batteries. Though South Georgia is outside the Antarctic Circle, the summer days are long. Even so, sunlight is a fairly rare commodity. Several glaciers end at St. Andrews Bay. The Cook Glacier pours its meltwater into the sea right beside the king penguin colony. At the start of the breeding season, a king penguin colony is quite different from that of any other penguin species. The difference lies in these great gatherings of downy young. At first you might think that kings produce their chicks earlier than any other species, but these are last year's young. The more handsome creature in the background is an adult. The young from last season stay around the colony all winter. Their parents only return from the sea every 2 or 3 weeks to feed them. The king, second only in size to the emperor penguin, is possibly the most handsome of all the 17 penguin species. At the start of the breeding season, the adults are still cramming last year's young full of seafood. In a month or so, the young molt and set out to sea to live independently. Scavengers like sheathbills and giant petrels hang around hoping for scraps and carrion. Their best pickings will come later on, when there are eggs and dead or dying chicks in the colony. Before breeding, the adults will have to molt too. They can't afford to do so while they still have to go to sea to get food for their young. Each day, there's a procession of adults down to the ocean. The other main occupants of the beach at this time are the elephant seals and their new pups. The young grow at an enormous rate on some of the richest milk in the animal kingdom. The lumbering elephant seals are a menace to everybody, including their own young. A mature bull can reach 18 feet and weigh more than 3 tons. And since mating follows about 3 weeks after the birth of the young, pups are liable to get rolled or trampled on. The male's nose is what gives the elephant seal its name. It's a symbol of sexual status and plays an important part in impressing rivals in mating duels. Penguins usually ignore such easy access to the sea and appear to prefer to make a 2-mile trek to a rocky point. For much of the way, they're exposed to the cumbersome antics of the lovelorn elephant seals. The penguins pass by several sea inlets en route. They plunge in, swim across, and continue the march to their objective. When they're close to the rocky headland of their choice, they stop and stand around, sometimes for hours. They pass the time preening or sleeping, until one of their number decides to take the plunge. What makes this particular place worth a 2-mile walk is probably that it gives access to deep water where they may be safer from the predatory leopard seals. For penguins ashore in the sun, the problem is not how to keep warm, but how to stay cool. The Cook Glacier moraine looks like a wall of soft gravel, but 2 inches below the surface, it's solid ice. By late November, great cracks are opening up in the ice, and the melt stream from the glacier is flowing fast and strong. The rushing river is much appreciated by the elephant seals. For the young kings of last year, still in their busby-like coats, it's their first aquatic experience. Their downy coats certainly aren't waterproof just yet, so it's better if they drink it rather than swim in it. Just above the rocky point at which the penguins go to sea nests the most elegant member of the albatross family, the light-mantled sooty albatross. Light-mantled sooties don't nest in dense colonies like some of their close relatives. They choose remote sites on cliffs and ledges. Before she started filming, Cindy climbed regularly to one of the nests, approaching it gradually until she was sure the bird totally accepted her presence and that there was no risk of disturbing it. The bird got so used to her visits that she even allowed Cindy to examine her egg and see whether it was close to hatching. Annie was equally accepted at a neighboring nest. Here the egg had started to chip. Meantime, down below, parties of adult kings who would soon be molting in preparation for breeding now often played in the surf as if making the most of their seaworthiness while it lasted. By early December, the thaw was in full swing. Fed by tributaries from several glaciers, the melt stream had become a raging torrent, carving out steep banks on its way to the sea. Until now, the water from the stream had built up as a lake behind a retaining barrier of sand. Now this was ready to give way, releasing thousands of gallons into the bay. The mere collapse of a dam is no problem to an elephant seal. In this new situation, the partly molted young penguins encounter all sorts of problems. Some manage to scramble out. Others are not so lucky. Cindy had to rescue this one. On days when the sun shone, an average of about 11 days a month, the penguins tried all sorts of devices for keeping cool. When the surf palled, they sometimes set off inland to climb the slopes where the snow still lay. If on the way up they resemble a party of novice skiers, when the moment comes to descend, the resemblance is even more striking. Very shortly now, the whole colony will be occupied with the rigors of the breeding season. The sun comes up across the South Atlantic. The last continent its dawn rays touched was Africa, over 3,000 miles to the east. In the background, the peaks rise to 7,000 feet. There's snow on them all the year round. Here at sea level, the dawn air is only just above freezing, even though the Antarctic season is advancing into summer. The king penguins are coming ashore from their fishing grounds perhaps 30 miles out to sea. They've been catching squid for their young. Like smoke from a dragon's nostrils, the elephant seal's breath condenses as the bulls spar in the chilly early morning air. It's one of the few days in the month when the sun shines out of a clear sky. Cindy Buxton and Annie Price, who started filming at dawn, return to the hut for breakfast and the daily tasks.
Even the most routine chores create problems on South Georgia. It's wilderness living, of course. No water taps, no drains, no modern conveniences. You expect that, and it's easy enough to live with. But elephant seals are something else. They doze all around the hut, and the smell can be overpowering. One of the rules we quickly learnt was always get your washing water upstream of an elephant seal.
While the sun shines, they'll want to be filming as soon as possible. But first there are stores to be drawn from under the stormproof covering. Lamps must be filled. The solar panel on the roof is checked and polished. It's an excellent day for charging batteries from it. Except for one weird cloud caused by a cold air stream from the peaks, the sky has cleared. By early December, 3 months after the team's arrival, the young are steadily being pushed by the adults towards the edge of the colony. This one is already half molted into its sea-going coat. Wings or flippers are energetically tried out. A king penguin colony at this time is a thoroughly confusing place, with young birds in all stages of downy coats and molt. The brown lane through the colony shows where the young have been edged out by courting couples who prefer the drier ground for nesting. Courtship among kings is a stately affair. This movement is called head flagging. It's followed by some mutual preening. This is fairly advanced courtship by a pair who've already settled on a nesting place. In the early stages, pairs often wander for 2 or 3 days before picking a site. Much of this advanced courtship is silent, though there's always a good deal of calling by birds who are just coming into breeding condition. This is the attraction walk, usually done by a male. The head swinging makes the most of the brilliant orange auricular patches. Mating usually takes place 2 or 3 days after the pair has settled down. Unlike most other penguin species, kings don't make a nest. They simply command a breeding territory 2 or 3 feet in diameter. Intruders of any size are usually made extremely unwelcome. This flipper holding is entirely fortuitous. King penguins lay a single, very large egg. They have a way of brooding shared only by their even larger Antarctic relative, the emperor penguin. They roll the egg onto their feet and then they cover it with an abdominal fold. Here's the process again. The female broods the egg for the first few hours and then alternates with the male for a day or two. He then takes over for the next 2 or 3 weeks while she heads out to sea to feed. Here's the changeover taking place. She shuffles towards him with egg securely balanced on her feet. A skewer on the lookout for eggs circles overhead. She lets the egg roll out towards him, watched by an egg-stealing sheathbill. Although the sheathbills won't get that egg, they found an unguarded one close by. Here's another changeover. Even after egg-laying, the pair bond has to be strengthened by display gestures. This one is called high-pointing. Once the pairs have settled on their nesting territories, woe betide any other penguin which tries to shuffle its own egg in. Since sealing stopped in the 60s, the elephant seal population on South Georgia has grown enormously. There are probably as many as 250,000 on the beaches when they come ashore to breed and have their pups in the summer months. These pups, now fully weaned in December, are extremely willing to be friendly.
You try not to be sentimental when you're involved in filming wildlife, but it's hard not to become attached to your subjects. I helped one to keep cool by piling wet sand on it. It's a trick it will shortly learn for itself, using its flippers to shovel the sand. They enjoy company, but I don't think I'm getting in the way of their natural instincts. In a few weeks they'll be gone for good, and I'm sure they won't even remember me. But I'll remember them.
A king penguin egg hatches 8 weeks after being laid. The chick takes 2 to 3 days to chip its way out. Birds will usually only feed their own young, but with king penguins, an orphan or even a temporarily deserted chick sometimes becomes common property. Any parent will brood and feed it, but this only applies for the first week. Later, the chicks become identifiable by their feeding calls. They also begin to recognize the calls of their parents. Very small chicks are brooded in exactly the same way as the eggs, on the feet. This batch of young are from eggs laid in December. The late breeding adults will lay in February. If a king penguin is an early layer one year, it will be a late one the next. So the interval between one lot of young and the next is from 14 to 16 months. It's a unique system among birds, a pair producing only 2 chicks in 3 years, but putting all their efforts into a small number of offspring is the system that seems to work best for these penguins. Even in high summer, gales known as katabatic winds come roaring down from the peaks without warning. Elephant seals appear to find being sandblasted an enjoyable experience. A returning party of the penguins doesn't seem to mind the rough sea in the least. Eventually, the wind calms down almost as quickly as it blew up. Now it's the turn of the young produced by last season's late breeders to go through their molt in preparation for putting to sea on their own. The adults are too engrossed in brooding their fast-growing chicks to take much notice of Cindy shooting close-ups. Just the same, it's advisable to keep out of beak range. Even an irate flipper can give quite a nasty bruise. Until they're about 6 weeks old, the chicks, if alarmed, try to hide under a parent, or failing that, the nearest other adult. The tactic isn't entirely successful. It leaves rather a lot sticking out. When the colony is at full strength like this, it contains around 40,000 birds. The late batch of last year's young is in the final stages of molt. Their yellow head patches, which will turn a rich orange in adult life, are starting to show through. By March, the elephant seals are molting before they return to the stormy Southern Ocean. The bulls are slightly more docile now that the mating season is over. Elephant seals are unique in that both their hair and skin molts. Crawling to take stills, Annie uses a little more caution. Elephant seals can move very fast on their stomachs, at times faster than photographers. One day in mid-March, a month before the survey ship was due to pick them up, Cindy looked out of the hut and said, "We've got company."
As we looked at these charming, inquisitive, dignified visitors outside our hut, I could see what the American ornithologist, Roger Torrey Peterson, meant when he said he'd rather be a king penguin than any other bird in the world. We weren't entirely sure who these visitors were. Perhaps non-breeders or late breeders from a previous year. In any case, since they weren't laying eggs or rearing young, they had plenty of spare time and chose to spend a good deal of it with us. We were, of course, delighted.
They have a wonderful sense of curiosity. They will investigate anything, and they're as trusting as a small child. Even in a tuxedo, it's difficult to look dignified when your legs are so short.
In the colony, the older chicks are now nearly as big as their parents. They tend more and more to form up into nursery groups or creches where they wait for returning parents to find and feed them. These two have identified each other by their calls, and their young bird now follows and successfully begs to be fed. Sometimes the camera team were followed by hungry young who seemed to think the girls were their parents. In the sooty albatross nests, the chicks now accept being filmed as readily as their parents had done. When making the acquaintance of an albatross, it pays to go carefully. Albatrosses have a nasty habit of spitting foul-smelling oil at unwelcome visitors, but Cindy was soon on friendly terms with this one.
Yeah, you liked it, didn't you? He's a pretty boy.
And then, totally without warning, the outside world forced its way into this remote haven. On April the 3rd, 1982, Cindy and Annie learnt by radio that the Argentine army had not only invaded the Falkland Islands, but had taken over the base at Grytviken as well. From the stores, Cindy took out the Union Jack she'd been given by the landlord of her local pub back home in Norfolk. They unfurled it to the ever-present winds. This was one part of South Georgia that was very definitely still British. Almost at once, they received reinforcements. When it became clear the Argentines were about to invade, the British Antarctic Survey Base commander at Grytviken sent 3 of his scientists the 10 miles round the glaciers to keep the girls company. There was a fair supply of food left. If food wasn't an immediate problem, accommodation certainly was. The tiny field hut was already overcrowded. As a boost to morale, however, the survey men were very welcome. From the BBC World Service, they knew that the British task force was sailing south at full speed while negotiations continued. Meantime, there was always the chance that the Argentines would send a party round by sea to pick them up, perhaps to use as hostages. The 8,000-mile voyage by the task force seemed to take a very long time. Somewhere out to sea lay the survey supply ship Bransfield. Fortunately, Cindy's radio was still in contact with the ship to relay some messages to England. The 3 scientists set up home in small tents with regular help and hindrance from the party of king penguins who still visited the hut daily. A careful inventory of stores was made. There was no telling how long they might have to last. Cooking oil was low, but the survey men knew of an emergency dump some 10 miles south. For entertainment, there were always the camp followers. In mid-April, the weather began to turn stormy, sometimes very stormy. At this time of year, the snow vanishes almost as quickly as it falls, but it was a warning that winter was on its way. On April the 25th, the castaways at St. Andrews Bay suddenly heard rumblings in the distance. At first they thought these were made by glaciers calving, dumping their ice into the sea. But very soon it was obvious that the Navy had arrived and that just across the mountains, Grytviken was being recaptured. The Navy and Royal Marines had retaken Grytviken. Now rescue couldn't be far away. While the reoccupying Marines secured their position, HMS Endurance sailed round the coast to St. Andrews Bay to rescue the 2 filmmakers and the 3 scientists. One of her Wasp helicopters soon flew in. They'd been packed up for days, but they could only take essentials with them. Their cameras and, of course, their exposed film. Everything else would have to remain on South Georgia. On a blustery, freezing evening, the team finally said goodbye to St. Andrews Bay. When all was aboard, the Endurance sailed for Grytviken. It was a very different Grytviken from the one they'd visited aboard the John Biscoe the previous October. For the moment, at least, this was no longer a deserted whaling station. but a busy naval base in the middle of a war. The Argentine submarine Santa Fe lay where she'd sunk after being hit by a rocket from one of HMS Endurance's helicopters. An Argentine helicopter had been shot down on a hillside. It was time to start the 8,000-mile trip back to England. The first leg of the journey home was aboard the destroyer Antrim. Next change on their voyage back to Ascension Island was to the frigate Antelope. Later, Antelope returned to the Falklands only to be sunk by air attack in St. Carlos water. It is 3,500 nautical miles from South Georgia to Ascension Island, some 12 days steaming. One of Antelope's helicopters flew Cindy and Annie the last few miles to Ascension. 3 days later, 7 weeks after they were stranded on South Georgia, the RAF flew them back to Brize Norton in England.